Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. Today in the show, we're going to talk all about Josh Minott, the case for Josh to be part of the rotation this year, what I think the Wolves will bank on him bringing to the rotation, and then related to that, what are some of the additional categories? We talked last week about a couple, but what are some other categories that I think the Wolves are trying to improve when we take a look at the context of their offseason moves? It's all coming on the show. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Happy Wednesday. Everybody happy hump day. And a big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, Locked On Wolves is free and available everywhere, including YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms, wherever you like to listen to podcasts. You can find this one. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. Locked On Wolves, along with all the other Minnesota Locked On podcasts, are available right now there. More great local sports coverage 24/7, and it's free. Download the Locked On Sports Minnesota app today on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. A great time of year for that. Yes, baseball is the only sport with a Locked On podcast show in Minnesota going on, but we're nearly to football, Golden Gophers, Vikings, and of course, hockey starts even before the NBA does here in just a few weeks. So check out all the other Locked On Minnesota shows. Again, it's the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. You can also follow on Twitter at Locked On T-Wolves and also at Beecken, and that's with two B's, two E's, C-K-E-N. All right. Today, I want to spend the bulk of our time talking about Josh Minott and why I think he will be a valuable addition to the Timberwolves rotation this year. I'll talk about what I think his role will be to start the year, what I think he brings to the table, and then related to that, different, I guess, qualities, aspects, maybe attributes is a better word, that the Wolves have been searching for this offseason. That's my take based on the moves that they've made to this point. And also, again, related, why I think Josh Minott will get an opportunity to be part of the rotation. So starting off with what I think this depth chart looks like. We spent some time on this last week and I think even the week before, but clearly the Wolves have a set starting five, right? It's Mike Conley and Anthony Edwards in the backcourt. It's Jaden McDaniels at the three, Karl-Anthony Towns, Rudy Gobert. Your first guys off the bench in some order are Kyle Anderson and Naz Reid, and then probably Shake Milton, because you need somebody in the backcourt that's going to initiate some offense. So I think those are your next three. So that's your top eight. And then you brought back Nickeil Alexander-Walker on 2 years guaranteed, and you have Troy Brown Jr. In some order, that's your top 10. I don't think there's any question about it. I think Jordan McLaughlin is on the outside looking in. You've, of course, got the rookie Leonard Miller, and then you've got last year's first-round pick, Wendell Moore Jr., and last year's second-round pick, Josh Minott, we're going to talk about today. And I think Minott right now is probably the 11th man. It's either him or McLaughlin, so he's either 11 or 12. Last year, he wasn't even there, right? He was essentially the 15th guy on the roster. Wendell Moore Jr. saw more minutes than him, and we saw Minott spend a lot more time in the G League. He played total between the regular season and the Showcase Cup. He played in 20 G League games, and generally really positive results in the G League. And also, I thought he played well at the NBA level in limited minutes. And remember, if you think back to what he did last year, there were a handful of garbage time appearances in his 15 games, but he played some brief rotation minutes. Not really rotation minutes. There were a couple of games, I guess, where he did. There was a game late in the season when I think Taurean Prince might have been out or something. He actually came in and played like at the end of quarters, tried to get stops. The Wolves were trying to keep Jaden McDaniels out of foul trouble. And, that was kind of the role he played and played well. There were a couple of games where he saw extended playing time. Actually, literally only a couple. I guess 3. He played 17 minutes in a 34-point loss at Denver on February 7th. Had 11 points, 5 rebounds, 4 of 7 shooting, knocked down his only 3-point attempt of the game. And then the very next night, second night of a back-to-back at altitude, they won by 25 at Utah. He had 12 and 11, shot 6 of 12 from the field, turned the ball over 4 times, had 2 steals, and 1 assist in the game. And then at Toronto, March 18th, he played 16 minutes, had 6 points, 3 rebounds, and assisted his steal, shot 2 of 3, no 3-point attempts in that game either. But there were a couple of other games where he just kind of came in at the end of quarters and played like a very specific role. It wasn't simply garbage time minutes. It was like, hey, come in and try and get a stop here at the end of the quarter. And I thought he did a good job there. I think that is part of what his role will be at the start of the season. The Wolves have more guys now that can do that because they get a full season of Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Troy Brown Jr., that same type of guy. And then, of course, you still have Jaden McDaniels. You still have Anthony Edwards. Like, that right there is 4 guys that can all guard point of attack or, primary wing scorers, Edwards, McDaniels, Brown, and Alexander-Walker. You're very comfortable with all those guys doing that. Now, if 1 or 2 is out, then you have Minott available. And by the way, side point, I would argue that all of them are better guarding that archetype of player, like an athletic wing scorer, guard scorer, point of attack type guy. I think all of them are better than Taurean Prince and Austin Rivers, who are both off the roster this year. So I think the Wolves have improved their depth in terms of that type of defender in a one-on-one situation. Minott, I think, is the 5th man up there. But if you have somebody that's injured, ill, foul trouble, all that stuff, Minott is kind of that next guy in line. And I think as an 11th man, he has the opportunity to do that right away. I don't think he played like opening night. I don't think he's in the rotation. Now, obviously things could change between now and then. Hopefully nobody gets injured. Hopefully nothing crazy happens, but I don't think he cracks that top 10 sitting here today. I do think that by the All-Star break, probably sooner, he will be in the rotation. I don't know who's going to be out of it. I'm not necessarily saying he beats out Troy Brown Jr. I mean, they're different players, right? But somebody would have to lose out minutes. I think it's more likely it's due to injury, which, obviously I hope that's not the case. But over the course of an NBA season, somebody's going to get hurt. Maybe he sees an opportunity and takes it and runs with it. And even if it's not a serious injury, say Alexander Walker gets banged up and misses some time, but Minott plays that role really well. Again, different player, but, come off the bench, be a defender, provide activity. Minott more of a big forward, and obviously Alexander Walker being more of a guard who can have the ball in his hands, guard/wing. I don't know, maybe Brown. Either way, Minott's a different player than those guys. But what I think he's going to bring, and I want to get more into this, is essentially what Taurean Prince was supposed to do the last couple of years, which is that bigger forward who can do a bunch of different things, who can guard the point of attack, who can be versatile and switchable, can grab rebounds, be a catch and shoot guy. Prince is a much better shooter than Josh Minott. That's the biggest difference between those two right now. But it's that type of role that Minott is going to be asked to fill. I want to dig a bit more into his stat profile, what he did last year, what he did in the G League, and the things that I think are very encouraging related to what Josh Minott could do for the Wolves this season. And we'll also get into the, the overall, some of the same things I want to talk about related to Minott are qualities, aspects, attributes that I believe the Timberwolves targeted this offseason to try and improve, shore up some issues, right? Rebounding, some of the defensive stuff, the activity level in general that's been missing since the 21-22 season with this team. So we'll get to all that here on the show yet today. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends over at Ibotta. If you're picking up burgers and hot dogs for a summer barbecue, you know that you're already doing it, so why not get cash back for it? You could do that with Ibotta. Ibotta gives you cash back on hundreds of grocery items from produce to personal care to pantry goods, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. Either link your loyalty account or upload your receipt after you shop and get your cash back. It's that easy. The average Ibotta user earns $120 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip. Or you could use your cash back to buy that flight you've been eyeing, that game you're dying to go to, or the fancy dinner that you've been craving. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much, but with Ibotta, you get real cash back that you can cash out to your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. You can earn cash back on hundreds of online brands and retailers too when you start with Ibotta, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKED when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store, download the free Ibotta app, and use the code LOCKED. That's Ibotta, I-B-O-T-T-A, in the Google Play or App Store, and use the code LOCKED. A big thank you once again for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, everydayers will be back on Friday. We'll get you caught up on any of the offseason news from this week. We'll also take a bit of a deeper look yet at the Wolves roster. And then, of course, there's all sorts of power rankings and offseason rankings. We'll get into some of that stuff on Friday's show as well. So make sure you tune back in. And then, of course, we'll be back again Monday. We're doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday shows right now during the month of August. All right. Continue to talk about Josh Minott. So some of the qualities I think that Minott brings to the table are obviously rebounding. I want to start there. And Minott's actual position, he's really a power forward. His size is more of a small forward, but he's going to play more as a power forward. The way I've described him really since the Wolves drafted him is more of a big wing version of Brandon Clark. He's a little smaller than Brandon Clark, but he's got the wingspan, he's got the athleticism, and I think rebounding is kind of the key for what he's going to be able to provide. Now, as a team, last season, the Timberwolves finished 27th, I believe, in defensive rebound rate. Let's see here. 26th in defensive rebound rate, 74.3%, 27th in offensive rebound rate. Individual rebound rate, total rebound rate, not offense or defense, total rebound rate. Rudy Gobert was first, Naz Reid was second, Josh Minott was third. Yes, he only played 15 games. It's a small sample, I get it. But you go back to his college numbers, and he was a good rebounder in college. In the G League, he was a very good rebounder. He was a top 3 rebounder on that team, on the Iowa Wolves. He had a rebound rate of 13.4% in showcase and 13.2% regular season. So call it 13.3, right? A rebound rate of 13.3 last season in the G League. And on the Wolves, that still would have ranked in the top 5, I believe. Let's see. Yeah, he would have been 5th on the Wolves in rebound rate if you took his Iowa Wolves G League rebound rate last season and plugged it into the Timberwolves. It would have only been behind Gobert, Naz Reid, Luka Garza, and slightly behind Karl-Anthony Towns, but ahead of Kyle Anderson, ahead of Anthony Edwards, ahead of Jalen Noel, Jaden McDaniels, on down the list. Rebounding is an aspect that he will bring to this team. If you look at what he did in college, he had a 14.5 rebound rate, which is again, plug that into the NBA. That would have been top 35 this season. And it obviously 14.5, as I just said, would have been top 3 on the Timberwolves last year. It's basically what he did at the NBA level. So he replicated his college rebound rate in 15 NBA games. It was only slightly below that in 20 G League games. So a nose for the ball. There's no way to really quantify that except for you take all the different do stuff categories. And I said a couple weeks ago, I called it do stuff ability. And maybe that's dumb, but I'm going to keep saying that because I think it's the best way to accurately describe what the Wolves need out of his role. It's blocks, it's steals, it's rebounds, it's loose balls, 50-50 balls, offensive rebounds, just getting back in transition, all that stuff that doesn't always show up on the stat sheet. And I know I've talked about this a bunch, but it's so important. Think about that team 2 years ago. And I know we talk about this like it was like a championship team or something, but like a Wolves team that took the 2 seed to 6 games in the first round and had a shot to win all of those, except for one, I think. There's nostalgia for that, for a team that's made the playoffs twice in 19 years, I guess now. But the Patrick Beverley, Jared Vanderbilt stuff, even to a lesser extent, Malik Beasley wasn't a good defensive player and he was a terrible rebounder, but there's just this activity level and frenetic pace that he played with. And it still was somehow more controlled than, say, Jalen Noel, right? Noel didn't contribute really much he got some steals, but that was kind of it. And he wasn't an efficient offensive player. So can you find players that know their role? Jared Vanderbilt, Patrick Beverley, they did, that also can wreak havoc defensively in the open floor, both in offensively and defensively, and can execute their role to perfection while still being so active in so many different ways. Josh Minott has all of those things, plus the athleticism, the size, the ability to understand what his role is. Again, he's 6'8", 6'11" wingspan. We know that he can, we saw this in the Summer League this year. His ability to jump a passing lane, he almost like a cornerback in football. He's guarding a wide receiver where he almost baits the ball handler into making this pass, and then Minott closes more quickly than anybody else. It's like prime Darrelle Revis is what it looks like, to make an NFL reference. But he closes on the ball, tips it away, can get out in transition, got a good enough handle in the open floor. And it's not simply that, but it's also in general, the whole stocks thing, right? Steals plus blocks, really good in all those different categories. We could talk about his block rate at the collegiate level, almost 5.4%. I talked about this a while ago, a couple months ago, I think on a show, and I think it might've been right after the season when I kind of recapped the season. I think it was probably his player review, but Josh Minott's college block rate of 5.4% would actually be 9th in the NBA. And I know it's different. I know that he was probably protecting the rim more in college, given his role at Memphis. But at the NBA level, like, the 5.4% block rate's not going to translate directly. But last year in the G League, he had a block rate of over 4%. Combined regular season Showcase Cup, it was like 4.4%. 4.4%, that's a pretty solid block rate at the NBA level. In fact, would have been first on the Timberwolves, higher than Rudy Gobert. Let me say that again. Josh Minott's block rate last season in 20 games with the Wolves was higher than Rudy Gobert's block rate. It would have led the Timberwolves. In 15 NBA games, Josh Minott's block rate was 5.4%. 5.4%. That, again, would have ranked, what did I say, 9th in the league? Obviously, it was the same as his collegiate block rate. Like, I mean, that's, we're talking about a guy that nominally will play the 3, but effectively play the 4 at the NBA level. He's only 6'8", but he's got the 6'11" wingspan, the athleticism, the anticipation, the basketball IQ, all that stuff. To be a legit rim protector, whether it's on ball or help side, Josh Minott can do those things. And the closing speed that I referenced a minute ago in terms of getting into passing lanes, he can do that in the half court, chase down blocks, help side blocks, coming from the weak side, double jump. Like, that's something we saw in Summer League. His ability to double jump, to jump and then get back up again. That's athleticism to be able to do that. Steal rate. Last season on the Timberwolves, again, limited action for Josh Minott. He had a 2% steal rate in 15 games. That would have been behind McLaughlin, Edwards, and actually Wendell Moore Jr. as well. At the G League level last year, where'd it go? There it is. His steal rate was just about a 1.5%. So a little bit lower than it was in college, but go back to what he did in college. He had a steal rate of 3.1%. Not translatable to the NBA directly, and we see that based on his steal rates last year, hovering around 2%, and still very good in the G League and the NBA level, especially for somebody that's not. A lot of times we see those steal rates higher for on-ball defenders that can pickpocket, like a Chris Paul or Jordan McLaughlin. He had a 3.1% steal rate in college. In the NBA, that would be the very best steal rate of all the players in the league last year. That would have been Josh Minott. Again, I don't think he'll lead the league in steal rate this year, even if he's in the rotation. But that's another way to kind of paint that picture and show what I like to call nose for the ball, the do stuff ability of Josh Minott, filling in all these different areas that the Wolves desperately need. He's got pretty good assist numbers for somebody who doesn't have the ball in his hands a lot. He's more of an off the ball type guy. He's going to be cutting to the basket. He's going to be, getting out in transition. He's going to be doing all those different things, catch and shoot a little bit, which is the big thing we needed to see in Summer League and haven't seen. And that, to me, is the biggest, when I say problem with his game, is the catch and shoot ability is not obvious yet. Last year in the G League, in the Showcase Cup, he shot 41% in those 11 games. But in 9 games regular season, he was only 29%. The NBA level, he didn't get a ton of opportunities to shoot threes last year. And he was, what was he overall? 2 for 6 across 15 games. So 33% on 6 chances at the NBA level. But the Summer League, it wasn't great. Like, the shooting percentage wasn't great. Still, overall, I thought Summer League, we talked about this, I don't know, beginning of last week or the week before. In general, I thought he showed out pretty well at Summer League. The catch and shoot, we would have loved to see more. But everything else, the ability to jump passing lanes, guarding the point of attack, getting on the glass, which is number one in my mind, all that stuff, the blocks, is fantastic. And he's going to bring that to the Wolves. I want to close today's show by talking about, along those lines, some of the different areas that the Wolves have clearly targeted to improve upon this year and how Josh Minott plays into that. So we'll do that here next. Last week on Friday's show, we talked a bit about specifically replacing Taurean Prince, Jalen Noel, and to a lesser extent, Jordan McLaughlin with Shake Milton, Troy Brown Jr., and to a lesser extent, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and how all 3 of the newcomers, again, including Alexander Walker in that group, are better above the break three-point shooters and better at navigating screens, being point of attack defenders than the 3 outgoing Timberwolves. And I include McLaughlin in that group because I don't think he'll be in the rotation. So those are two qualities that the Wolves clearly sought out. Like, hey, let's get better at guarding the point of attack, at getting around ball screens and being aggressive. Chris Finch so many times last year after losses would talk about how the Timberwolves weren't good enough at the point of attack. They just simply allowed dribble drive penetration. They allowed guys to just run them through screens like crazy, just get run ragged around screens. And when that breaks down, you're obviously putting a lot of, and early in the season especially, it felt like the Timberwolves guards were just like, Rudy's back there. Like, he'll figure it out. He'll block a shot. And that puts Rudy in a tough spot. And then that puts, whoever's helping from the corner in a tough spot. So the Wolves need to get better at the point of attack. They need to get better around screens. I do think that we talked about this, the ball screen navigation. That's something that Troy Brown Jr. is fantastic at. It's something that Nickeil Alexander-Walker is fantastic at. We know Jaden McDaniels is the best in the league at it based on all kinds of numbers from last year. And Josh Minott, I think, will be good at that too. He's obviously bigger, and he's not always going to be guarding these guards at the point of attack, but he's versatile, switchable, etc. You can have him guarding a big, setting a screen, and switch him onto the guard and feel pretty good about that if you want to switch. Obviously, the Wolves, like many teams, would prefer not to switch. But with Minott on the floor, you can. We talked about above the break three-point shooting. That's not something he's going to help you with, at least not yet. It'd be great if he could. But Taurean Prince struggled above the break last year. He was below league average, but you look at Milton, Brown Jr., and Alexander Walker, which was surprising to me, were all very, very good above the break three-point shooting last year. Rebounding, we already talked about that. Look at the Timberwolves last season, their total rebound rate, and we talked about how Minott was third on the team. If you count his 15 games, he would have ranked behind just Gobert and Naz Reid in terms of total rebound rate. This is another area. You look at the newcomers. So, counting Minott there, Troy Brown Jr. last year, his rebound rate was 8.9%, but his career is 10.5. 10.5% ties him with Kyle Anderson. Like, Troy Brown Jr. is a 6'6", effectively just a wing who guards a lot of twos and guards the point of attack a lot, isn't really around the rim a bunch defensively, but he's had a double-digit total rebound percentage every year except for last year, and overall for his career is 10.5%. On last year's Wolves team, that would have tied him with Kyle Anderson. And if you take out Lawson, obviously you take out AJ Lawson, but that would put him tied for 7th on the Timberwolves last year in a rebound rate, which may not sound like a lot, but it's tied with Kyle Anderson, who played pretty exclusively the 4 last year for the Wolves. Well, yeah, because of the Towns injury, he did. He'll play a lot more 3 this year. Ahead of Anthony Edwards, ahead of Jalen Noel, ahead of Jaden McDaniels, ahead of Taurean Prince, well ahead of Taurean Prince. Like, Taurean Prince had a 6.2% rebound rate. Troy Brown, career rebound rate, 10.5%. That matters. Shake Milton, the Wolves aren't signing Shake Milton to grab a rebound. But he had a 7.2% rebound rate last year. That would have ranked him 9th on the Timberwolves, ahead of Jaden McDaniels. Shake Milton had a better rebound rate last year than Jaden McDaniels. Now, a lot of reasons for that. McDaniels guarded point of attack a lot. He wasn't crashing the glass very often, but he shouldn't have a lower rebound rate than Shake Milton. That's virtually the same. It's within 0.1%, but it was better than Wendell Moore. It was better than Alexander Walker. It was better than Taurean Prince. It was better than every point guard that set foot on the floor for the Wolves. Mike Conley, D'Angelo Russell, Jordan McLaughlin, Austin Rivers, Bryn Forbes. It seems like it doesn't matter that a guy's got a 7% rebound rate versus a guy with a 6 or a 5. Over the course of the season, it matters. If every 100 rebounds, you're getting an extra rebound, sometimes that's the difference in a game. And I don't think I'm overstating that. Subtle differences matter. The difference between, I said this a million times on the show, the difference between bad and good and great, sometimes it's the same. Or between bad and decent, that might be the same. Between very good and great, the same difference, right? If you can remove a bunch of minus rebounders, Taurean Prince, Mike Conley, or not Mike Conley, Taurean Prince, D'Angelo Russell, Jordan McLaughlin, Austin Rivers, and improve your rebounding with slightly below average rebounders or decent for their position in Shake Milton, Troy Brown Jr., and then a really good rebounder in Josh Minott, that's going to, a rising tide lifts all ships, right? A little bit, that works here, right? If your worst rebounder is Shake Milton at 7%, essentially, in the rotation, or it's Alexander Walker at around 7%, you're in a pretty good spot. You should not be the 26th team in the league in terms of defensive rebound rate if that's the type of player you're adding to your rotation. Shake Milton, better than all those guys I just listed. He last year, he would have been the best rebounding backcourt member on the Timberwolves besides Anthony Edwards. Troy Brown Jr., career rebound rate that would have been like 7th on the Wolves last year. And he's a 6'6" guard, essentially, a 2-3. So clearly the Wolves have said, look, we need to improve our point of attack / screen navigation defense. We need to improve some of our 3-point shooting, catch and shoot above the break, etc. We need to improve our activity level. Troy Brown Jr., Josh Minott do that. And also Leonard Miller, by the way, who won't be in the rotation, but like that's one of the things he does is he's active all over the place, both ends of the floor, do stuff ability, right? And we need to improve our rebounding. And no, Shake Milton's not a world beater, but he's better than Conley, Russell, McLaughlin, Rivers. Troy Brown's not a world beater, but he's better than Jalen Noel, Wendell Moore Jr., Taurean Prince, Jaden McDaniels. You're improving your overall bottom line in all these different categories, and that ultimately matters. We're talking about a team that won 42 games and squeaked into the play-in and squeaked into the 8 seed. Might that be the difference in a packed Western Conference? A handful of rebounds a month. Like it's not quite this simple, but like if it's a handful of rebounds a month, then maybe it's a half a win a month. And over the course of the season, like that's 2 to 3 wins. That could be the difference between the play-in and the 5 seed in a packed Western Conference. I get that I'm oversimplifying it, but those things matter. When you get beat on the glass every single night, I mean, go back and listen to our post-game podcast last year with Marnie Gellner. How many times was it? Yeah, same thing again, rebounding. Same thing in transition defense, activity level. Josh Minott's going to help you transition defense. Troy Brown Jr. is going to be much better in transition than the guys that aren't on this roster anymore. Much better than Jalen Noel, better than Taurean Prince. I talked about this on Monday's show. In a vacuum, yes, Taurean Prince is a better player. But if you're talking about the fit for this team and what this team was lacking, I'd argue Troy Brown Jr. and Shake Milton at the same price as one Taurean Prince this season are going to improve the team in a real way. All right. That's all I have for you today. Friday, we're going to do some more offseason stuff. Of course, we're Monday, Wednesday, Friday right now here through the month of August. Just a couple of weeks away from FIBA World Cup. We'll have more news on that when that happens. Very excited to watch some actual pretty high-level basketball. That's going to be a lot of fun. So that's all I have for today. We'll be back on Friday. A big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show's free and available everywhere, including YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms, wherever you like to listen to podcasts. You can find this one. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. You can follow on Twitter at Locked On T-Wolves and also at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, C-K-E-N. Of course, the Locked On Wolves podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. The Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.